It's a brand new day for Spider-Man, which means we have a brand new video here for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. Yes, the fourth installment of the MCU Spider-Man franchise is here. And today I wanted to give you some of my thoughts about this movie. Now, I will be getting into some spoilers later in the video, but for now, I'm going to keep it completely spoiler free. But if you want to watch the movie and then come back to the spoiler section later, please do so. But for now, let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Going into this movie, I had the absolute highest expectations. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and after watching the trailers that I'll admit might have shown a little too much, I was so excited to see such a different direction for Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man. Although I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. I enjoyed Homecoming and Far From Home enough, and while No Way Home's story was super clunky, because it's so nostalgic for me, I rewatch it all the time, so I love that movie. But again, you could just tell right off the bat that there was such a different energy brought into this movie and into the character of Spider-Man. I think a lot of that is due in part to director Dustin Daniel Cretton, who also directed Shang-Chi and the Disney Plus series Wonder Man. And speaking of the directing, the movie was shot so beautifully. The dynamic camera movement, the bright colors, the emphasis on practical stunts and web swinging. I mean, everything about this movie looked incredible. I actually saw a thing that said Jackie Chan's stunt team helped with the coordination of the scenes, and it shows. I mean, every scene is well choreographed with a tasteful amount of CGI blended in, and I can go on all day about how this movie looks, but now I want to talk about the film's story. Spider-Man Brand New Day picks up at a very vulnerable time in Peter Parker's life, and there's this interesting contrast between his life as Spider-Man versus his life as Peter Parker. As Spider-Man, he is absolutely in his prime, and we've never seen this version of Spidey top so many villains and criminals, and it was so great to see him actually get to swing around New York and fight crime, because we haven't really seen this interpretation of Spider-Man do that. So yeah, he gets the key to the city and is living his best life as Spider-Man, but his life as Peter Parker is extremely lacking. It seems like he doesn't interact socially with anyone. We don't see him try to make new friends, and he gets so hung up on his old friends, Ned and MJ, who he stalks on social media. I mean, it's so depressing. Who would do stuff like that? Certainly not me. And it's interesting because we get to see the emotional weight of Peter dealing with the trauma of losing all his loved ones and how it's led him to neglect his life as Peter Parker. So much so that it starts having effects on his body and his powers, kind of like how we saw in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And I just gotta say, one of my favorite things about this movie is how much inspiration it took from the Spider-Man projects and properties that came before it. As I mentioned, Peter's emotional battle and how it's affecting him is mirrored by what we saw in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Some of the web swinging sequences reminded me of the opening scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and a lot of the action scenes reminded me of Insomniac's Spider-Man games with the stunt work and finishing moves. But anyways, sure enough, Peter's body is going through some weird changes, so he goes to see Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, to try to figure out what the hell is going on with him. Now, I thought the Hulk was great in this movie, by the way, and all the scenes with Bruce as the Hulk was just a freaking sight to behold, but I'll talk more about him in the spoiler section. Now, let me tell you something about John Bernthal's Punisher.
I'll tell you what.
Let me tell you something else, man. Shit, I tell you, go on it with. But here's what I'll tell you about.
Yeah, son, I'll tell you what, man.
Let me tell you something, man. Man, I'll tell you what.
What I will tell you.
What can be said that hasn't already been said about this guy's portrayal of the character? The dude was born to play the part. He steals every scene that he's in this movie, and the chemistry between him and Tom Holland is through the freaking roof. I loved every scene with him, and I loved how much he was in this movie. I mean, with the amount of characters and storylines that they had, I'm glad that they chose him to have him as long as they did. Speaking of the amount of characters in this movie, Sadie Sink is here, and I'll talk more about her in the spoilers, but I think she delivered an incredible performance in her role. She really is a talented actress, and I'm excited to see her in more movies going forward. So going back to the story a little bit, Peter's trying to deal with this changing body, and there's this mystery threat going around New York, and whatever it is, it has the power to control people's mind, and Peter has to uncover the secrets behind this new enemy. I have a lot more opinions about this main storyline, but I can't really get into it without mentioning spoilers, which I'll get into right now, but before I do, I'll just share some last non-spoiler thoughts. I really enjoyed this movie. It was shot and edited beautifully. The performances by the whole cast were phenomenal, and surprisingly, I think they managed to incorporate all of these characters and stories very cohesively. I was never taken out by how much was going on, and I think all the characters had their moments to shine on screen. Save for maybe like one or two minor characters, but I think they did a great job with all of it. And another thing I want to mention about this movie is how well they did with the marketing. I mean, I feel like I was seeing posters and billboards for this movie everywhere. The first trailer alone generated 718.6 million views in the first 24 hours of its release, making it the most viewed movie trailer ever within that time frame. Like I said, I think the trailers and TV spots showed way too much, but still, there was no doubt that this was going to be one of Marvel's biggest films in recent memory. And guess what? It is. Spider-Man Brand New Day recorded the biggest domestic preview in American box office history. And guess what movie they beat out to do so? Avengers Endgame. But do you think it stops there?
Yes. Wrong.
As of this video's recording, Brand New Day became the biggest opening day in box office history, once again beating Avengers Endgame. And it doesn't stop there. Spider-Man Brand New Day now holds the record for the biggest domestic opening weekend in movie history. If you don't know what that means, just know that this movie is a pretty big freaking deal. So you best believe we're going to talk about it. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts about the film. This movie was very enjoyable. It is the best Tom Holland has been as the character, and it's got a lot of Spidey goodness in here. I'm going to rate it an 8.8 out of 10. Now, I'm going to be getting into some spoilers for this movie, so if you haven't had the chance to see Spider-Man Brand New Day, go watch it and then come back and click on this section of the video so we can talk about all the juicy spoilers in this film. This is your official spoiler warning. Now let's get into it. I want to start off with Sadie Sink's mystery role in this film, and I gotta say, I don't think anyone would have guessed that she would be playing Uncle Ben in this movie. Brother, of course we knew she was going to play Jean Grey. She literally looks like the character, for crying out loud. I mean, she also looks like Mary Jane, the real MJ, of course. But from the trailers and plot synopses that we got from this movie, we knew her character specifically was going to do all these mind control shenanigans. So I don't know why Marvel would go through so much trouble to hide her character when it was extremely obvious who she'd be playing. So while I thought Sadie Sink delivered a killer, literally a killer, performance as the character of Jean Grey, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really like the fact that she was the main villain of the movie. Which I understand, I'm kind of in the minority in thinking that, but I don't know, something about her inclusion in the movie felt out of place, and not even a little bit out of place, but very out of place. I felt like the narrative about this movie when it was announced that it was going to be a more grounded, focused Spider-Man story. He wasn't going to be a part of the Avengers anymore, so now Marvel had the opportunity to make a true Spider-Man story that takes place in his world and doesn't revolve around the other heroes in this expansive universe. So of course, I expected a villain from the list of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, keyword a Spider-Man and not X-Men. Notice how those two words are different, because I don't think Marvel took note of that. Obviously, Jean Grey's inclusion in the film is sort of a soft launch for the X-Men to be finally in the MCU, but I came to watch a Spider-Man movie, damn it. I think by having an X-Men character who I know is actually an important member of the team and who's more of a hero usually than a villain, be the main antagonist for this movie, it really took me out of the film's plot. Now, this is one of my biggest gripes of the film. I had a few other minor gripes that I'll talk about right now, but not only did her inclusion in the film not land for me at all, I also didn't love how they treated this version of the character. She's introduced as this mysterious figure who has the ability to take control of people's minds and that she has some sort of agenda. We later learn about her plans when the Department of Damage Control took her sister, who also has psychic mind powers, and they experimented on her and presumably killed her, which is why now she's going on this bender and is trying to uncover what happened to her sister. But the issue here is that she behaves so dastardly, it makes me lose empathy for her as the story goes on. She warps into the minds of innocent bystanders and uses them to taunt Spider-Man while almost damn near killing them, which is a unique and cool concept for a villain, but I'm sorry, I just can't get super invested in this character when I know she's not really a Spider-Man villain and she's doing all this messed up stuff throughout the movie. Like, she takes control of MJ's mind and throws her off a building. She makes a guy walk into the street and get run over by a car. And then there's the whole take sequence. And it turns out that it's this mind-controlled lady driving the tank. Like, girl, we know your sister was abused and ultimately died, and that is horrific, but damn, chill out. So yeah, by the end of the movie, when Frank was posted up with a sniper ready to shoot her, I was kind of rooting for it, but Spider-Man ended up taking the bullet and ended up bleeding profusely. I legit thought he was gonna die, but let's be real, like, they would kill this character after the freaking money they've made and the money they're gonna make. So yeah, not really into the whole Jean Grey being here thing, but it's okay because there are plenty other villains here, like the crime mob boss Tombstone, who's literally only in it for 2 seconds, but it's okay because we got Boomerang. who's literally only just in it for this shot. But Tarantula? This guy that's running into the wall? Oddly enough, this montage of Spider-Man fighting all the villains we saw in the trailer is literally all we see of them, and it's definitely an interesting choice to say the least. I guess they didn't learn their lesson from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 when they advertised Rhino as one of the villains, but then the only shot we saw of him was the same one we saw in the trailer. So this villain montage takes place in the beginning of the film, and it's a perfect setup for the movie to showcase what Spider-Man has been up to. That followed by the take sequence. I mean, when I was sitting watching this movie, I was absolutely glued to my seat. I genuinely thought this was going to be the best Spider-Man movie ever. And it was looking like it was going to be that. But then as the movie went on, there were like little tiny things that I didn't really love, but it ultimately didn't ruin the movie for me. And these are my own personal little gripes. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I'm in the minority here because after reading people's thoughts and comments about the movie, these things didn't really seem to bother them as they did me. So yeah, starting off with Yelena being here, it seemed like she was only in here to remind the audience that this movie takes place in the same world as the Avengers, and also for like a silly little gag, like the whole big potato, small potato thing, which I thought was sort of a lame excuse because Homie Jean is literally taking control of people's mind, and you're telling me that it's not a big potato? That's literally what Sentry was doing in the Thunderbolts movie. So yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of her. I also didn't like how much advanced tech Spider-Man had. I was hoping this movie would kind of get rid of the high-tech AI gadgets that he was getting from Tony Stark. I mean, we saw him stitch together his suit at the end of No Way Home, so I was anticipating this more grounded Spider-Man that relied solely on his powers, his spider sense, and his intellect, instead of having AI do everything for him. But I guess we live in that day and age, so yeah. I'm sad that Daredevil wasn't in the movie. I mean, it makes sense though. There was already a lot of characters in the movie, but with Punisher being here and it taking place in New York, I mean, the freaking Hand Ninja Clan was here also, so I thought for sure we'd see him, which if we're going down the list of things I didn't really enjoy, the Hand being here just felt so random, even more so brought on by the fact that Daredevil wasn't in it. They had so much backstory and lore in the Daredevil Netflix series. Meanwhile, here they're just reduced to like Foot Clan level ninjas where they're just here as fodder for Spider-Man. Some of the scenes at the end didn't really land with me either. The scene where Peter daps up Ned and they do their little handshake, and it seems like he recognizes him and the Doctor Strange spell is broken. But then there were some people saying that he just recognized him because MJ had called him Peter earlier when he was in the Spider-Man suit. So that was pretty confusing. And there was the end credit scene that I thought was and also left kind of ambiguous. Some people were saying that it was Miles Morales from the Into the Spider-Verse, and then some people were saying that it's the MCU version of Miles on Doom's Battle World. So I don't know. I feel like Marvel in general has done some horrendous jobs with their post-credit scenes, post-Endgame, where they either mean nothing, show us something at the end that doesn't lead to anything, or overall just confusing like this one. I know I've been kind of ranting about some of the things that I didn't like about this movie, but honestly, they didn't negatively affect my movie experience as much as the things that I loved positively affected it. I mentioned earlier that I'm not the biggest fan of the Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy, and a lot of that actually has to do with his friends Ned and MJ, but I actually think they did a great job with their characters in this movie, and both of the actors did a great job performing them. It makes sense though when you really think about it, because the most interesting thing about those characters in the previous films was that they knew who Spider-Man was, but now they don't know who he is, so they have a lot of room to develop as characters on their own. I will admit, I found it kind of interesting that Peter was so hung up on his friends, especially after so much time. If I'm not mistaken, this movie takes place 4 years after the events of No Way Home. I mean, I don't know, I feel like if it was me in that situation after all that amount of time, I would have imagined that I would have moved on. But I mean, they're pretty much all he had after Aunt May died. And I did enjoy the scenes where he reconnected with them. So I guess it's fine. It was just something I noted. I promise I like this movie a lot more than I'm leading on right now. Spider-Man Brand New Day had so much heart injected into it and a lot of deep, heavy emotions shown through the lens of Peter Parker, which is why we relate to the character so much. And I think they did an outstanding job of portraying that. I also liked what they did with Peter and MJ's quote-unquote love story, because I was really worried that the writers would make her eventually remember everything and who Peter really is, which would have felt super cheesy and lame. What they did instead was fantastic and absolutely gut-wrenching. When MJ finds the note that Peter was going to read, it was such a tense scene and it sucked the air out of the theater. And I liked that they took a more realistic approach in that this version of MJ is not at all who Peter interacted with and fell in love prior to the Doctor Strange spell. Everything about her is completely different, but it's still cheeky to see Peter care about her so much, even though she doesn't really know who he is. That fake out scene when they're on the roof too, and Jean Grey, unbeknownst to the audience, takes control of MJ's mind and pretends to remember everything and kiss him. It was a pretty wild scene. And I remember being in the theater going,
Fucking diabolical.
so yeah, I really like what they did with the character of MJ and Peter's former best friend Ned, who is obsessed with tracking Spider-Man and claims to have known him before, which I thought was a cool callback to that. And I like that they had some continuity because obviously they knew who both Peter and Spider-Man were before Doctor Strange cast a spell. But again, did Ned remember who Peter was at the end of the movie? Well, we don't really know. According to some reports and the actor who played Ned himself, it's a little open-ended, so I'm sure it'll be revealed at some point later. I mentioned this in the non-spoiler section, but I really loved Mark Ruffalo's inclusion in the movie as Bruce Banner. I wish we could have saw more of him helping Peter, kind of how like we saw him help his cousin Jen in the Disney Plus series She-Hulk. And of course, I wish we could have saw him more as the Hulk. The scene where he transformed in the Department of Damage Control was peak. That was some of the best action I've seen, not only in a Marvel movie, but just in any movie. I'm definitely gonna be rewatching that scene over and over on YouTube. But yeah, I love them in the movie. Someone who I thought was a bit underutilized was the character of Scorpion. I mean, he was teased all the way in Spider-Man Homecoming almost 10 years ago, and we're just now seeing him, which again, I felt like he was a little underutilized. He's not really like a main villain type character anyways, but for how much we saw him in the trailer, I expected him to play more of a role in this film, or at least more of an important role in this film. There's literally only 2 or 3 short scenes with him, and that's it. But hey, if we need to cut his screen time to make more room for John Bernthal's Punisher, then I'm all here for it. I like that the chemistry between him and Spider-Man was a little bit more lighthearted than what we're used to seeing out of this character, especially in his own Netflix series and in Daredevil. It's kind of wholesome to see characters who have this rugged exterior soften up a bit because of someone as hopeful and positive as Spider-Man. It was just wholesome to see, especially the scene at the end where Punisher puts on Spider-Man's mask to distract the crowd outside the hospital so Peter can get out. I didn't even notice at the end when he carried him in the hospital that it mimicked the comic book cover of him carrying a beaten and bloody Spider-Man. I mean, what craftsmanship by the makers of this movie. They absolutely knew what they were doing and wanted to be faithful to the source material while adding their own spin on things and making fans happy. I mean, that's a pretty tall order for any filmmaker to accomplish, and I think they nailed it here. That's pretty much going to be it for all the spoilers I want to talk about. All in all, I had a great time with this movie. Probably my second favorite installment in the MCU Spidey franchise, right behind No Way Home. But still, this was a great Spider-Man movie that I would say lived pretty close up to the hype, because the hype for this movie was very real. And I'm just happy that we got an awesome summer blockbuster featuring one of my favorite superheroes that was actually pretty dang good in its own right. So yeah, those are all my thoughts about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really does mean a whole lot, so I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, subscribe for more videos like this and many more to come. Let me know what you thought about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Is it the best Spider-Man movie in the MCU? The best Spider-Man movie overall? Let me know. Like I said, that's all I got for you. So until the next video, I'm Edgar Enrique, and I'll see you then. Bye.